Hello and welcome to North Country Matters. My name is Donna Seymour. I'm a member of the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters, one of the civic partners for this show. Today, my guest is Ilana Berger, the New York director for Hand in Hand, the Domestic Employees Network and Caring Rising Majority. Ilana is a colleague of Bobby Sackman with the New York Caring Majority, who has been a guest on the show before, talking about home care issues. Ilana, welcome to North Country Matters. I'm glad you can be with us to talk about the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program, its importance in our state, and the budget threats to it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Well, it's we've worked together for in the Power Network, and so I think you'll be a good expert witness for us today. Take a minute, if you would, please, Ilana, and tell people a little bit about yourself and how you got into this kind of advocacy work, please.
My name is Ilana Berger. Like you said, I work with Hand in Hand and Caring Majority Rising. I'm not in the North Country, I live in the Hudson Valley, and have been organizing for the last almost 30 years, I guess. So I've worked on a number of issues, deeply believe in the power of community organizing and of people coming together to organize, to create solutions that make this a better society and economically, racially just society. I think like one of the things that we do in our work, so in the last 10 years or so, I've worked in the care movement, really trying to build our country's care infrastructure. And one of the ways we do our work is we share our care stories. A lot of this is in recognition. We like to use, I'm going to butcher it a little bit, but Rosalind Carter's quote that says, there's only 4 kinds of people: those who give and receive care and those who will give and receive care. So care is an issue that really impacts all of us. It's very universal. So we like to share our care stories. So I will say one of the major things that really keeps me drawn to this work is my grandmother, who passed away in April 2020 at 108 years old. She was driving a stick shift at 101 and then had a stroke when she was 104 and did not want to go anywhere but her apartment when she left the hospital. So the last 4 years of her life were made incredibly high quality and full of love and joy because of home care workers. And it gave me a very up-close experience of the vital work that home care workers do and the way that the society does not value them in terms of respect or pay.
That is so true. I have seen that very much in my rural part of the state as well, and you're exactly right about how important it is to give people that quality of care at home when we can, because that's where they're the most comfortable. So, having said that, what is the Consumer-Directed Personal Assistance Program, and who does it serve? And why and how is it important to the overall home care network of services here in the state?
I'm going to just back up a tiny bit. You probably already heard a lot of this from Bobby, but just for a little bit of context about why home care is so important in New York State. New York, like many states, is aging very rapidly and people are living longer. We have about 20 million New Yorkers. Just about 5 million, that's a quarter of the state, is over 60. And we're the baby boomer population is continuing to age. We haven't hit the peak yet. That means a lot of people are going to need some kind of long-term services and support. And basically, at most poll, the AARP, SEIU 1199 have done polls, but also it's just kind of common sense. Do you ask anybody? Nobody's choice is to end up in a nursing home. We all want to live and age in our own homes and communities. And for many of us, the only way that's going to happen is home care. At the same time, New York has the worst home care worker shortage in the country because of low pay. So we're just, to contextualize all this, we're in a situation right now where we desperately need home care workers. And one of the main ways that's going to happen is by deep investment in home care and improving wages. So the way home care works in New York State, I'm just going to I don't want to be too boring, but a few basic numbers. So there's about 500,000 home care workers in New York State. And this is mostly most of New York's home care is through Medicaid. There's two ways that people get their home care. One is sort of traditional home care, I think of as the home care agency, and the other is the consumer directed program, which rather than people going through an agency, they hire, fire, train, and direct their own aide. It really comes out of the independent living movement and the disability rights world, which said, I, as somebody who's hiring a home care worker, am able to self-direct, to manage and control and train the person who is providing incredibly intimate care for me. And really also speaks to the unique situation that each person who needs care has, and that they're able to. And one of the examples that I've often heard and I feel is the most helpful when you talk about sort of training and self-direction is a home care consumer who has a particular bone degenerative disease, right? Who, if they had a traditional home care worker who was very regimented in the training, they had to follow the training. They do CPR a certain way. This consumer said, if they do traditional CPR on me, they will crack all my lungs and kill me. I know what they need to do if I'm in a situation where I would need some kind of CPR type service. So I should be training my aide to do what I need for myself and my body. So that's sort of the program. The other advantage of it is it allows people to hire friends and family, so that you're able to, and this is particularly important, you probably understand this in the North Country, if there is no agency or there's no agency home care workers, you can hire somebody who lives down the hill, or you can hire a family member who has already had to leave their job anyway to provide full-time care for you. At least they're able to get some pay for some of the hours of the work they do providing care. So the consumer-directed program makes up just over half, basically, of home care in New York State. We'd say about like 350,000, it's like it's more than half, 350,000 workers in New York State are through the consumer-directed program, and an estimate is about over 100,000 of those are family caregivers.
Okay, thanks. When Bobby was with us a few weeks ago, she talked about the cuts in Governor Hochul's 24 budget to home care wages, which were about $2.54 an hour, and that's for over 174,000 home care workers, about 800 million in cuts. As if that weren't bad enough, when the 30-day amendments came out, the governor made additional cuts to this vital home care sector. Tell us about that, and tell us about what the impact will be on the directed home care work.
Yeah, it was I mean, the original cuts that Bobby talked about were maddening and frustrating. What came out in the 30-day amendments was beyond baffling. I mean, really, again, going back to the context, and the governor has admitted over the past few years of work that we've done that there is a home care worker shortage. She's shared the story of her own father needing home care and how important it is, but somehow she seems to say one thing and do another. So she's proposing cuts that would essentially devastate the consumer-directed program. And we know that means people end up in nursing homes or hospitals or dying. And there's not enough nursing home beds to even fit people. So we were surprised. And I think it just shows a real short-sightedness, because as the population keeps aging, people will still keep needing home care, and there's no way to cut your way out of that problem. So her continuing to make cuts, it just makes no sense, and it's going to have real devastating effects. But I will share really quickly what some of the main things that she proposed. One, her proposal eliminates anyone from the consumer-directed program who uses what's called a designated representative. So that's for people who cannot themselves direct their own care. It's a family member or somebody who does that work for them. That's everybody under 18. So that's anyone whose family, who uses who has, that was terrible. I'm sorry about that. Anyone who has a child under 18 but wants to use the consumer-directed program. And then any older adults who have Alzheimer's or dementia or other developmental disabilities that don't allow them to self-direct. That's over 100,000 New Yorkers right there that would be cut from the program. She also creates the opportunity for the state to cut maximum hours for people who receive care, which again, if you need 20 hours of care, you can't just give somebody who needs 20, you can't just give them 8 and expect they're going to be okay. Like, you can't just arbitrarily cut. And then also just makes it harder for people to access home care. In the consumer directed program in particular, they have some vague language about potentially mandating trainings, which again, nobody's opposed to training, but the whole concept of the consumer directed program is based on there is no mandatory training. People send their workers to the trainings that they see fit. So that's sort of the short. That would be, home care hours cut for up to 250,000 people, 100,000 people just cut off the program. There is no sort of corollary agency care that can pick up all those issues, all those people. So it is essentially just cutting a lot of people from home care.
Yeah, and part of the problem with all this is, for example, it talks about cutting hours, but it doesn't say what the limits would be. So you don't really know if you're somebody who needs X
Yeah.
number of hours and your hours are cut, you could be cut to 2 from 20, couldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that are left really open. And I would say what adds sort of insult to injury to this whole thing is that a lot of this just reflects really sloppy budgeting and poor management on the part of the executive. So in her original executive budget, there were a number of items that sort of now this makes, we see where this comes from, where they had unallocated cuts to home care, to long-term care. I don't know if you have a job in sort of you're working for a CEO of a big company and you need to present a budget and you present your budget to your boss that just says, here's like $1 billion in unallocated cuts. Like they didn't actually present a balanced budget. And so this is sort of them then saying, oh, we have to somehow make up how we're going to get those numbers. This is some of it. They still have 200 million in unallocated cuts, even in the 30-day amendments. We don't even know where that's coming from. But this is just sloppy. It's not well thought out. It isn't, there's a huge range based on what limits are they going to impose? What are they not going to impose? And it actually feels like they don't really know what they're doing.
So, Elena, you've said that the proposed cuts to home care hours and wages would force tens of thousands of older adults and disabled New Yorkers into nursing homes and institutions. In rural New York, those beds just do not exist, and the numbers
Mhm.
needed to take the people currently being served by home care. And in fact, according to the Association on Aging in New York, older New Yorkers pay 72 billion, that's with a B, dollars every year in state and local taxes, and they only receive back 0.08% of the funding for vital services they need to age in place. Andrea Montgomery, who's the St. Lawrence County Office of the Aging Director, has said that if the Aging Network could get $10,000 a year, we can keep someone in their own home. On
Yeah,
Medicaid for that same year, if they're in a nursing home, they're going to pay $140,000. So how
absolutely.
on earth does any of this make sense? It's for the state to do this. Clearly, the state's spending priorities when it comes to home care are just plain disastrously wrong. What needs to happen to stop these cuts in their tracks? How can people let their legislator know this is not acceptable?
I mean, yeah, one, I fully agree with you. And the sort of the aging budget is a whole other side of this, which more investment on that side would, as you say, prevent many people from having to go on Medicaid and would, small hours of home care for older adults through the aging departments would keep people safe and healthy in their home for many, many years. I'd say two things. One, the backdrop for all of our work is this campaign, Fair Pay for Home Care, which would raise workers' pay to 150% of minimum wage. We've had really great economists show that if you make that investment, you are also making an investment in our economy. It's not an expense and it's an investment. It would create, thousands of jobs. It would bring about $4 billion back into our economy. So that making a smart investment in home care as opposed to sort of death by 1,000 cuts is actually good for all New Yorkers. The other thing, though, that is what we're working on right now is looking at the complete irony of proposing savings in the Medicaid budget by cutting older adults and disabled New Yorkers off of home care and cutting worker wages to pre-pandemic levels, while we are literally watching $3 billion a year just go out of our system to private insurance companies. So we're working on legislation called the Home Care Savings and Reinvestment Act, which we want to get in the state budget, which looks at the way the Medicaid home care delivery system works and the privatization of that system that happened in 2011 under Governor Cuomo. So the way we do our home care now in New York is the money, our Medicaid dollars go to the state. And then instead of going directly to the home care agencies or the consumer directed program, they go through insurance companies. And these insurance companies are in theory doing care management, which if you ask any consumer or home care agency, there is no managing of any care happening by the plans, but by the insurance companies. They're actually siphoning off, billions of dollars in profit and exorbitant administrative fees. And if we did away with that system, eliminated the private insurance companies and the profit motive, we believe there'd be savings of anywhere from $1 to $3 billion a year, which could then be reinvested in home care. It would make all of these cuts absolutely unnecessary. So that is what we're working on right now in the state budget, both fighting against these cuts and trying to redo our Medicaid-funded home care delivery system to eliminate profit for private insurance companies and ensure that all of our Medicaid dollars meant for care actually go to care.
Yeah, and that would be a sensible thing to do, and it would solve so many problems, not to mention the fact that we would not end up warehousing our seniors and our disabled, which is basically what we're doing now, and we don't even have enough warehouses for that, so to speak.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I've read some statistical information recently which says that almost everyone in the last 3 years of their life ends up at home needing some kind of care, whether it is a family member or, as you say, someone coming in from the outside to do it. But it's critical that that care be available to these folks. And quite frankly, it makes no sense at all to pay starvation wages to care workers and then have them end up on the Medicaid system themselves as they age because they haven't had a living wage. They haven't been able to save for their own retirement. We are perpetuating a flawed system, aren't we?
I mean, 58% of home care workers in New York rely on some form of public assistance. It is maddening to think about the work that home care workers do, the emotional labor, the physical labor that they are having themselves to rely on public assistance. Yeah.
So one of the things, Ilana, that voters will have an opportunity to do, including advocate with their local legislators during the rest of the budget process, because we're waiting for the one house budgets to come out, which we hope will be more sensible than the governor's budget, at least in this particular area. But this fall, in November 5th, voters in New York State will have the chance to flip their ballots and vote for the New York State Equal Rights Amendment. Now, this amendment will specifically add protections to the Constitution of the state for the disabled and the aged. How important is that going to be to the people your organization advocates for?
I mean, we are very hopeful that it would, everything you said about sort of the value that older adults have in the state, economic value, but also, people talk about the aging boom as a crisis. We think of it as an opportunity to live in thriving multi-generational communities, but seeing gender as a category age as a category that is worthy of protecting against discrimination, looking at age discrimination in the workplace and housing, and recognizing that older adults are equal citizens and make important contributions to New York State, and same goes for disabled New Yorkers, would be incredibly important. So much of the sort of basic fighting that we have to do is about older and disabled adults seen as less, seen as invisible. We saw a lot during COVID. We are not disposable. Like the notion that older and disabled New Yorkers are somehow disposable or not as worthy of protection as other New Yorkers. So that would go a long way in creating more inclusion, respect, and rights for older and disabled New Yorkers.
Well, I think we should also take this opportunity to remind folks that if everything goes well, we're all going to be older. And so we're all going to want these same protections. It's and you're quite right when you talk about the invisibility of
Mhm.
older adults. They are often just not seen as contributing members of society when in fact they've spent their entire lives contributing to our society, and now we're shortcutting them
Yeah,
because
that's right.
it's convenient, and should never be convenient to shortcut people at all in this area. So as we wrap up, Ilana, and I do want to thank you for coming in and talking about this, what thoughts do you have? What would you like to leave people with in terms of what's the next step for folks? What can they do?
I mean, the major things, and I don't know if there's notes, I could send you some links. I'm not sure the best way to do it, but we would love to have everybody call the leaders of the state legislature, Carl Hastie and Andrea Stewart Cousins, telling them that we want to see the Home Care Savings and Reinvestment Act included in the One House budgets, and we want to see no cuts to home care.
All right, thank you. That's a very powerful message, and
it takes
we
just a minute.
yeah,
It's very quick and easy to do.
And we know that when enough people make enough noise, politicians do pay attention, don't they? So,
Yes.
all
And
right.
we have you can go to nycaringmajority.org to look at our website, and there's a great 3-minute PSA that we created that talk about this issue as well that you could check out.
Yes, and I will put all those links in our show notes as I
Great.
finalize this particular broadcast. So again,
I'll
Ilana,
send them
thank
to
you.
you then.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for speaking so passionately about an issue that is so important to our state, to our communities, to our families, and to us. And let's hope that people power can make some changes this year and get these cuts thrown out, which is exactly what should happen to them. And the money's there, isn't it? It's just a case
The
of
money is there.
redirecting the money. It's not like we have to dig deep to find new money. We just need to redirect it in an appropriate way that is sensitive to the needs of every member of our community. So
We just need to dig deep into some stadiums, and there we go.
there you go. Well, all right. Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming in today.
Thank
So
you for all your work.
oh, well, it's my pleasure. This is really important stuff. And, we all have a voice, and our vote is our voice. So if we don't hear from our politicians what we want to, during this budget season, they'll have to make sure they listen to us come election season, won't they?
That's right.
All right. Thank you, Ilana. So
Thank you.
these conversations are a production of North Country Matters. This show is a civic collaboration between the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters and the Potsdam Public Library. Until next time, remember, our North Country matters.